Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack something I like to call the invisible shield protecting our everyday lives. Seriously, from the second you wake up and turn on the tap to the literal air you're breathing while walking down the street, there's this massive, complex system working behind the scenes to keep you safe. So let's make that invisible shield, well, visible. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining environmental health, then check out clean water and sanitation, look at how we manage waste, dive into safe housing and food, talk about defending against vectors, and finally wrap up with air pollution and radiation. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. Defining environmental health. Let's establish exactly what we're talking about and the hazards we're up against every single day.
So, what's the biggest threat to your daily health? You know, it's super easy to focus on the rare, exotic stuff we see on the news, but honestly, the absolute biggest impact on your well-being comes right from your immediate surroundings. We're talking the environment right outside your front door and, yep, even inside your living room. The World Health Organization really hits the nail on the head here. They define environmental health as all aspects of human health determined by physical, biological, social, and psychosocial factors in our environment. But here's the real kicker. It's not just about passively observing these things. It's the active, hands-on practice of assessing and controlling those exact factors to stop disease before it even starts. Our shield essentially has to fend off four main types of hazards. First, physical hazards. Think extreme temperatures, noise, or radiation that can cause physical trauma. Then we've got chemical hazards, like lead or pesticides, where the danger really depends on your exposure dose. Third are biological hazards, the living stuff, viruses, bacteria, fungi. And finally, sociocultural hazards. This one's actually fascinating. It includes things like poverty or even cultural beliefs that might stop someone from seeking the medical care they need. Moving right along to part 2, clean water and sanitation. This is where we see how crucial it is to ensure the water we rely on doesn't turn against us. This breakdown is wild because it shows how water threatens us in so many different ways. It's definitely not just about what we drink. Look at the categories here. You've got water-borne diseases like cholera that spread when contaminated water is ingested. But then there are water-based threats like schistosomiasis, where pathogens literally live in stagnant water. There are even water-washed diseases. These happen when there's a shortage of water, which leads to poor hygiene and causes skin or eye infections. And let's not forget water-vector diseases, like malaria, spread by insects that breed in the water. This whole matrix is exactly why hardcore water purification is literally a matter of human survival. So how do we fight back? Large-scale municipal water treatment. It acts like this giant multi-stage filter. First off, you protect the source itself. Then, just storing the water naturally kills off some of the short-lived bugs. Next up is coagulation and sedimentation. They add chemicals to make the tiny floating particles clump together and sink to the bottom. After that, filtering it through sand and gravel physically removes larger pathogens. And the grand finale? Disinfection, usually with chlorine. That's the knockout punch that destroys whatever microorganisms are left. All right, part 3, managing our waste. Because what happens to the stuff we leave behind is our next massive line of defense. There's a night and day difference between unsanitary and sanitary disposal. Just tossing garbage into an open dump or setting it on fire? Absolutely terrible idea. It causes massive pollution, poisons the groundwater, and creates this perfect breeding ground for flies and rats carrying things like typhoid. On the flip side, sanitary methods actually neutralize those threats. We're talking controlled tipping or sanitary landfills, where waste is compacted and buried under soil. Or composting, which brilliantly uses biological breakdown to turn organic trash into safe, usable fertilizer. Now let's track the journey of liquid waste, which is, well, sewage. It's pretty amazing to see how we turn raw sewage into something safe enough to release back into the world. It hits primary treatment first to let the heavy solids settle out. Those solids get sent over to a sludge digester, while the remaining liquid pushes on to secondary treatment. By the end of the line, hitting it with chlorine guarantees that the effluent we release won't wreck aquatic ecosystems or spark those nasty water-related diseases we just talked about. Section 4, safe housing and food. This is where our shield gets super personal, right inside our own homes. We don't usually think of our houses as medical devices, right? But from a public health perspective, they absolutely are. A good house has to meet strict physiological needs like proper lighting and ventilation to stop respiratory bugs from spreading. It also has to meet psychological needs, giving us enough space and privacy so we don't feel entirely stressed out. Plus, it actively fights off contagion with solid sanitation and clean water, and keeps us safe from accidents with sturdy, high-quality building materials.
And then there's the food inside that house. Contamination usually happens in one of two ways. Primary contamination is straight from the source, like if the animal was sick or the veggies grew in polluted soil. But secondary contamination, that one is entirely on us. That happens when food handlers have poor hygiene or when cross-contamination occurs during transport. It's exactly why we need those strict hygiene rules and regular medical checkups for anyone handling our food.
Moving to Section 5, defending against disease vectors, because sometimes the threats literally fly right to our front door. In biology, a vector is basically a living bridge. It's an organism, often an insect, that harbors an infectious disease and passes it from one host to another. Things mosquitoes, tsetse flies, or even certain snails acting as biological transport vehicles. Sometimes they just carry the bad guys on their legs. Other times, the pathogen actually multiplies inside the insect before it bites us, causing serious, devastating illnesses like malaria or sleeping sickness. So we hit back using a whole arsenal of strategies. We've got physical controls, which are simple things like window screens, bed nets, or just draining puddles so bugs can't breed. Then there's biological control, like dropping specific larvivorous fish into water to literally eat the mosquito larvae. We even use genetic control, using radiation to sterilize male insects. And of course, chemical control with insecticides. Though we have to be super careful with those, balancing quick-acting sprays with longer-lasting ones so we don't accidentally poison our own backyards in the process. And finally, Section 6, air pollution and radiation, dealing with the invisible threats floating all around us. When it comes to the air we breathe, pollutants come in two flavors. Primary pollutants are the direct offenders, like carbon monoxide shooting out of a tailpipe or volcanic ash. Secondary pollutants are a little more sneaky. They form chemically up in the atmosphere when those primary pollutants mix together with sunlight, creating nasty stuff like ground-level ozone. Both of these wreck our respiratory systems, which is exactly why things like zoning laws that keep factories away from houses and strict emissions rules are an absolute must. And then we have radiation. Now don't panic, not all radiation is out to get you. Non-ionizing radiation, like the radio waves or microwaves we use every single day, has longer wavelengths and is generally totally safe. But ionizing radiation, things like X-rays and gamma rays, that's the stuff we have to actively shield ourselves from. It packs enough energy to penetrate deep into our tissue and cause serious, even fatal cellular damage. That's why it is so heavily regulated in places like hospitals or nuclear plants. So, bringing it all together, I hope it's clear that public health isn't just some boring textbook concept. It's a highly active, 24/7 defense grid holding the line against physical, chemical, biological, and sociocultural threats. But here's the thing. It's not just up to the doctors or the city planners to keep the shield powered up. Every single one of us plays a vital role in this, just mastering the modern 5 R's of waste management. Refuse what you don't need, reduce what you do, reuse, repurpose, and finally, recycle. Doing that can take a massive load off our local environment. It's those little, everyday actions that scale up to build this huge protective barrier for all of us. I want to leave you with a thought to chew on today. Look out your window. Think about the water you're drinking, the air outside, and how your community handles its trash. How strong is the environmental health shield in your own neighborhood? Because at the end of the day, our health is totally tied to our surroundings. Protecting the environment, it's literally the exact same thing as protecting ourselves. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and remember to keep a close eye on the world around you.